Why are the most digital people building physical businesses? Why aren't they building digital businesses? How do I make sure that this product doesn't break from day one because there's going to be 500,000 people that go interact with it? Go find the people that are already the most engaged and get them in the loop early because they're going to be super excited. They already are your fans and then they become your early customers. If I were to kind of step back and just talk about the whole process, it's discovery, designs, development, and then refine and grow. This will become more urgent over time. It's just like courses and newsletters, they've been popularized sooner, where now it's going to be like software development.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Creator Ops Podcast. I'm your host, Thomas Schreiber. The goal of this podcast is to educate you on becoming a great operator in the creator economy. On today's episode, I talk with Jay Singh, who is the founder of Casper Studios, a design and development agency creating incredible digital products for creators. During our conversation, we talked through a lot, including a step-by-step process for determining what type of product you should create, how to involve your audience throughout the development and feedback process, how to properly price your product, the importance of financial models and projections for predicting revenue, the best way to develop a prototype, including which AI tools Jay utilizes, and lastly, how to tackle the uncomfortable idea of asking your audience for money. And now for my conversation with Jay Singh. Let's talk about problem identification and just this idea that a creator is in a spot where they want to develop a product and they're trying to figure out, what do I develop? What does my audience need? How do I understand what they need so I don't end up building the wrong thing? Tell me how you approach problem identification and just maybe some of your processes around figuring out what is the biggest problem that this creator can solve for their audience.
I think like a lot of our business today, I've honestly just tried to copy and paste somewhat relevant and relative models and then just try to apply it for the creator space. So I try to keep it relatively simple. So if you were going through YC and they were kind of guiding you in terms of how would you understand what business to build and who to serve and what to do, it's honestly likely quite a bit of the similar type of thinking where I want to have a hypothesis in terms of who I can serve. And then from there, I want to understand more about their pain points. From there, I want to go talk to them, maybe have a conversation with them. From there, I want to ask them what kinds of other tools are they using. From there, I want to understand like how big is a market to be able to, if I solved a problem for these people, if they paid this much, how much money would that actually make me? And so sometimes maybe it's just a level of awareness piece, but it's not overly complicated. I think the difference is now it's just done in a much more compressed way because a lot of work can be done faster because of AI and also because of our networks of people. So if a creator comes in and they're excited about maybe innovating in learning and development, just because of our networks within the Bay Area and the broader tech ecosystem, I can give a call up to like the head of L&D at some enterprise, or I can give a call to like someone who led like a learning platform just because of some of the networks that we've been able to develop. And I can ask them like, hey, what's going on in your space? And while everything else is being automated in the background in terms of research. And then the other thing I'll do is go actually talk to people. So I think if I were to give guidance to a creator in terms of how to be able to think about discovery for their audience, it's understand like who's in your audience, go speak with them, understand what kind of pain points they're going through. And then from there, like test hypotheses, go build something for them, see like how it is. And so we can kind of walk through the whole process, but that's like at a high level, it's effectively the same process that any founder would take to be able to go understand if the problem that they're solving and the product they want to build is relevant for their customer base.
I want to double click on that first initial part of talking to your audience, right? There's a lot of things you can do. You can start with a Google form. That's the most basic form. Start with a bunch of questions, put it out on whatever platform you're on. Let's actually start there. How do I suggest those Google Forms, Typeform, whatever you want to use, they get formatted? How many questions do you typically suggest on that initial kind of outreach of saying, hey, audience, I really want to learn more about you and what you're wanting from me. Could you answer these questions? What are those first couple questions? Is it 5 questions, 10, 20? Like, how do you structure a form like that?
I would maybe even take a step before then and just build a hypothesis of what you think your audience wants. And unlike the founder example that I was talking about before, unless they have a lot of expertise in that industry, they may not have any idea actually what the specific niche of they want to go build like a legal tech product or something. They don't actually know like what the workflows are, or like how to be able to solve for them, or what their audience or what their customer segment would be going through. If a creator is successful, they know what their audience wants. They create content for them. And so the most savvy creators, frankly, already kind of have a good sense in terms of here's like the questions that they're asking me in my comments. Here's the content formats that I've been doing the best. Here's what people are DMing me about. And so there's likely already hints of like what are the things that are your audience's pain points by just how you're interacting with them today. And so what I would do is maybe start with that. Maybe actually look at the comments, look at the percentages of like engagement on like certain types of content, and try to distill something from there as your hypothesis. And so then I would even go use AI for research and say, okay, I think this is kind of roughly like what my audience is. They are, 18 to 35-year-old men who care about X. They live in Y city. Like that data is somewhere within the creator kind of stack, right? Like whether on YouTube or another social platform. And then you can start to build out personas. Okay, cool. Like here's like 3 personas that already exist. I think this is kind of what they're solving for. Maybe let's use AI to beef that out a little bit. Okay, what other problems would they have? What kind of products do you think that we should build for them? And so I would actually get that ready to go before you even go reach out to people.
In terms of the AI products that you would use for that kind of assessment or research, as simple as tossing into chat, tossing it into Gemini, what would you recommend there?
Any model that has deep research associated to it. So I like ChatGPT's deep research model. It actually isn't a model; it's just like a way that they work with the model. I think they have it on like the more expensive version of the subscription. But potentially they've also rolled it out in like their normal SKU.
Yeah, there's a free version. I think there's like 4 or 5 maybe
you could use
a day, right? I think you just click the DeepSeek option, which is super
exactly.
powerful.
Exactly. Yeah. So you could use DeepSeek, any deep research reasoning model, or it literally will take 20 minutes and go to research and come back. And even before then, like very tactically, I'm thinking about, I want to maybe build a different subsection of our business, right? Like I just talked to ChatGPT about everything that was in my brain. I hit voice note or like the voice button on it on web or on mobile. I just spoke to it and I said, just grill me with questions to make my thinking a little bit more crystallized. I did that for 20 minutes and then I said, okay, cool. Deep research. Now come back to me with an output that has, in this case, it'd be like, here's like, give me the user personas, give me the research, give me the market sizing, give me the personas, give me all these things. And then that is your initial set of kind of, okay, now I have a sense of maybe what they would want
Directionally.
Yeah. And so now let me go reach out to them.
Yeah.
And so we can talk about what to ask them and everything, but I think honestly, you can get a pretty good direction right off the bat by just using the tools you already have existing today and the data you have on your audience.
No, I think it's a good point too. And it's the step before the Google form or the type form actually reaching out. When you're inputting into the DeepSeek or chat or whatever model you're using, are you saying keep in mind my channel, keep in mind, go through all my comments, go through all, 500 videos that I have and take that and then take my thoughts of my hypothesis of, I think that this subsect would want A, B, and C, do market research on that. That's how you're approaching it.
Yeah. Sometimes it can't look at the comments a bunch, but just depending on like YouTube's kind of, I think maybe if you use Google's interface, it may do a better job because I think it's just like easier to be able to kind of look at the data across Google platforms. But what are the top comments? Like, what are they saying? What are they asking for? It is pretty shocking, actually, like the level of detail that you can get by just like kind of messing around with deep research.
Before we get to the Google form, any other tools that you really like for this specific step or stage?
For the research stage, that's all I would probably use. So I would probably sit down with the creator. I'd go ask them like what dashboards are they using today to monitor who their audience is. Like probably YouTube is like the most beefed out version of it. Maybe there's others that you're using too that I'd be curious to learn about. But from there, I would then build out that massive 10-minute prompt, which is just like your free form ideas into ChatGPT, which then deep research can go a layer deeper on and be able to kind of give you back at least like the first version. It's like a brief. You're like, okay, cool. Let me move forward with this now.
Yeah, and depending on the size of your audience as the creator, I do think there's cool opportunities to have it do a lot of research and pull comments from specifically Reddit. Like, I think, I know there's a lot of creators with dedicated Reddits talking about the latest videos. I think that kind of, even if you're not huge, you're still, I mean, I've seen creators with a couple 100,000, they've got dedicated, Reddit threads that are just their fans talking about it. So, I mean, first step would just be read those, but then you can put it into chat or any tool there and kind of extract value. Let's go. So you've done the research, you've kind of put together your hypothesis, you put together your demographics around A, B, and C people, and what products they want. Now you're going to take the next step and say, audience, give me your feedback. Would you be able to be willing to fill out this form? What does that form look like?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it just really depends on each creator and how they interact with their audience, because some of them would only have like a YouTube channel. Like they don't have, or maybe like a TikTok or an Instagram. They may not have like another way to communicate to their audience. But I think most pretty savvy creators that we talk to, they've already built out like a newsletter. And so now there's already like, okay, cool. We have a subsection of the broader audience that is engaged with this newsletter. Maybe some of them have already bought something from them, maybe like merch or something else, right? And so it's actually like looking at the broader funnel and saying, okay, you have like 7 million, you have 10 million like followers across all channels. You have like 500,000 that are actually subscribing to a newsletter. 20,000 that have purchased something from you before. Let's go talk to them first, because they're the most engaged. They're the most people that are probably like, they'll do anything really that you ask them to, especially if there's like some fun incentive on the other side. If you fill out this form, we'll have a chance to be able to connect, like in a group call, something like that. That's how I would start. Like, go find the people that are already the most engaged and get them in the loop early, because they're going to be super excited to. And we could talk about this too, because I think you should keep that subset of people engaged the entire product development process, because then they become your early fan. They already are your fans, and then they become your early like customers, and then they'll be the ones that are giving you really raw feedback as well. And you can trust them a little bit more because they're already like they've paid for something, they engage with you. That's what I would do as well. It's like, don't send this to your whole audience, because it's just too broad, right? I think Colin and Samir talk about this, how like they wanted to kind of like help a very certain subsection of their audience to be able to become better YouTube creators. If they sent that to everybody right off the bat, then it would have kind of muddled up their messaging to their audience. But they only sent it to like a certain amount of people that signed up for a newsletter for them, that were already interested in how to become a YouTube creator. And so I would think about it similarly to that.
They also talked about, in that example, I think we're talking about the same thing. It's a high ticket price thing. You can't reach out to everybody and say, spend, I don't know how much the actual product is, but it's definitely not cheap. I think it was 1,000 plus, maybe 2,000 plus
maybe, yeah, of course. Yeah.
And not something cheap that everybody can afford. And you're saying, you're going to kind of hurt your audience relationship if you share that with everyone. But I love the idea of keeping that subsect of really loyal, dedicated people in the loop from day one. Hey, do you want to be in the, creating a separate sequence in, if you're using Kit, if you're using whatever, your flow, and saying, I'll send you an update every other week on where we're at. Would love your feedback from A to Z. And that's such a good way to build the loyalty, and then not guarantee it, but close to guarantee some sales at the end, because you've really kept them in the loop. And just a good opportunity for content in and of itself as a creator.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what this is. It's just so much fun, Thomas. It's just like, it's so, as someone who's learning more about the creator ecosystem more, it's the problems that we're dealing with is like, oh man, who do I reach out into my like 10 million follower audience? Or like, oh man, how do I make sure that like this product doesn't break from day one because there's going to be 500,000 people that go interact with it? Or like, those problems are champagne problems, right? Like, that's amazing. There are problems for sure. You have to think differently about quite a bit of things right off the bat. You have to think about, once a product goes live, then like it's going to have like a crazy uptick, almost guaranteed. And then how do you actually like help with retention of those users over time? Like, a normal like startup founder wouldn't probably need to think about that until later, right? And that's like a earned problem, where this problem exists right away. Yeah. And so we have to prepare for that, which I think is super unique. Like, there's not a lot of people in teams that like are thinking about that, right? It's so unique. But wow, what an awesome problem to have, right?
Totally. And the problem of, I've built this massive brand over the last X amount of years, tens of millions, maybe even hundreds of thousands of people tune in and watch your stuff. There's a responsibility there. But like you said, for the most part, it is champagne problems of hey,
It's
I know
important
this is
though,
going to work, but it is really,
but it's
really
important.
important. We've seen examples of that where
Yeah.
creators
Lack of
will launch,
thoughtfulness.
yeah,
Yeah.
and just tone deaf products, or taking something that was once free and now putting it behind a paywall, right? Kind of breaking some of those key rules of audience engagement. I want to go back to the form. I know I keep asking you about this. The questions. I'm always, because we've gotten questions before. How many questions is too many questions for that initial stage? Because I think there's a couple stages to it. Fill out this form, whether it's maybe 5 or 10 questions. I think stuff beyond that could be a little much. Utilizing video in that stage, and then it's taking those people that answer and saying, "Are you willing to jump on a call? Are you willing to do X?" But that initial outreach, what do you think works, and what have you seen kind of work in the past?
I think there's like the base case, and then there's maybe some more experimental stuff that you can think about. So the base case is generate a list of like 7 to 10 questions. Those questions leave relatively open ended. It's more for you to be able to learn more about their day to day and like some of the problems that they deal with, and maybe even some of the tools they use to solve those problems today. But it's more it's likely going to be more qualitative. It's not, you don't have to overthink them, right? We went back and forth on a couple of those questions too. It's like, what is a pain point that you're dealing with today? How are you looking to solve that today? What do you spend more than 2 hours a week doing today? And then how are you solving it today? Right. And so these questions are kind of like what people train like sales development or like account executive people to kind of do in software companies, right? Like you're trying to understand like some level of their budget. You're trying to understand authority is a framework within the enterprise sales motion, but these are just people, so they have the authority to make whatever decisions they want. But how do you get to like the fact that they actually need something like this, and then how urgent it is for them, right? So you're looking to answer those questions without explicitly saying, do you need this? Or like, how much time is this taking you? Or like, do you have the money for this? It's a little softer questions, and it's getting to better understand like what they do every single day. So for example, if let's say it's like a food creator and you're like, how much time do you spend today cooking? You're like, oh, I spent like 3 hours cooking. You're like, great. How much time do you spend looking for recipes? Or like, you're trying to like indirectly try to answer a question that if they're like, I spend 5 hours a week looking for recipes. It's hard for me to be able to do that. Like, I wish I could save some more time, like doing that. Like, maybe we can guide us to testing out a couple experiments in terms of maybe there's a recipe book or, something like that.
I think it's a great point too. Of you and I had this conversation in the pre-interview, but also in the past. Of I originally kind of approached it of the basic, hey, would you be willing to pay for X? What do you think about Y? Really kind of hitting the nail on the head a little bit too direct in that initial outreach, which may be helpful at a later point once you're maybe a little bit farther along. But I think it's a really good idea, like you're saying, to start with some of those. What are their day-to-day problems, whether that are generally in the same realm that you're thinking about, that your hypothesis is in. A good example is parenting or expecting parents, right? What's your partner is in their first trimester, or you're expecting, or you're wanting to get pregnant. What are you facing right now? What challenges are you
What are you
facing
worried
right
about?
now? Yeah,
Yeah,
and we're
exactly.
worried about fertility. We're worried about paying for it. What are those different things? And then the question that I really love that you mentioned was, what are you paying for right now? Right? What services are you paying for? What tools, what apps are you paying for right now? Good example of that, just personally, was me and my wife both have Whoop. We really like our Whoops. We like to understand the data, that kind of stuff. For our baby, similar thing. If someone would ask us, what are we paying for right now? We would say we pay for our Whoop, and we pay for another, fitness app that we, train off of. It wouldn't be that crazy of correlation to say that now we pay for a app that we use to track our baby's sleep, and when they're napping, how much they need to nap, that kind of stuff. And
Exactly.
good
Yeah.
example of connecting those two. Of, okay, this person's clearly caring about A, B, and C. These products relate.
I'll give you maybe two more corporate-y examples because they're coming more top to mind. And I used to do sales at LinkedIn for a couple of years before going on to like their product and BD teams, and I was on their LinkedIn Learning, and so there was like e-learning kind of content like platform kind of thing, like a Coursera for companies. One thing we'd ask them is like, how much money do you spend right now on like training and development? And they're like, oh, like last year we spent $100,000 on inviting all these guest speakers to come in and be able to speak to our team, and then we also had like, every quarter we have like a workshop where like someone comes in who's an expert in their space and do it. And in the back of your mind, you're like, okay, I think a speech for these people costs like 25K minimum. Like if it's happening like every month for the whole year, that's probably like they have a budget. Like you're starting to kind of, if you're really vibing with someone, you can say, how much money do you spend on that? That's okay. I would recommend you asking that if you're really connecting with someone. Sometimes I just ask people like, how much money do you want to spend on this project? And like, let's just, if you're really connecting, and they'll just give you their budget, which is fantastic. But at least for these like early questions, right? You're like you can hit them more indirectly, because those answers are way more thoughtful versus like, yeah, I'd spend like $6 a month for this. Like, how do you know that? They don't even know what that product is yet, right?
Totally. And the difference in the width or the gap between I'm willing to pay for that and actually pulling out your credit card is usually
it's big. Exactly.
Gigantic.
Exactly.
And there's early stage startup examples too. I remember the company Imi. I don't know if you've heard of that. They're instant ramen, but they're healthy instant ramen, high protein instant ramen. And early on, this is probably 3 or 4 years ago, when Kevin, the founder, was working on similar kind of process of trying to understand what do people want, and a lot of early stage companies do this. A lot of the really good ones that have developed really strong products have done this, but they'll go as far as, this is before the product's even launched, they'll run a landing page, they'll run a quote unquote, maybe a fake brand, and have someone actually put their credit card in, and obviously they get the money back, and right, it's not actually charged, but it's again testing are you willing to pull out your credit card?
Willingness to pay.
That's gigantic.
100%. Yeah. I think that makes a lot of sense. I think like even earlier in the funnel, like if you were to kind of, okay, cool, you've had the research questions, and then now what, right? Like, and you have like a subsection of like really engaged people. And they're going to be, give them like a name, give them like a team, like give them like something, like they're like, wow, like I'm a part of this. This is like pretty insane, right? I get to build this with them, and it's true, they are, because like if they weren't there, you wouldn't really know like what exactly to build. And then now you can start prototyping so much faster, right? Because of AI. It's like, okay, cool. Now I have all these ideas. You can do it yourself. You can come work with a firm like ours. And like, sometimes within like a day, you can get like mock-ups and visuals of like what that product will look like now because of some of these tools. And imagine like on a Thursday, you get an email from your favorite creator saying like, hey, do you want to be a part of this process? And like ask some questions and we'll pick the best ones. On Tuesday, you get another email saying, congratulations, you're a part of this like group. You're with like another like 50 people or 100 people that are just like you. And now you're in a Slack channel or a school community or whatever the thing is. And then you're chatting with them. You have like a team meeting or something. You hear a bunch of feedback. By Friday, you have mock-ups of what their product looks like. Keep sharing content about it, guys. Like if you want it, right?
And let people know that you're part of the process. And I think it's a great point about the product development. I want to dive deep in there as far as the initial prototyping, the initial V1s, and the tools that you're using to really close the gap of getting to V1 as fast as possible, so that you can get it in front of those types of people and they say, oh yeah, no, actually I said I wanted that, but no.
But what about if we do it like this?
Yeah, what if we actually put this here and this here? Talk about, Jay, that process and some of those tools that you are using, and feel free we can use an example kind of all the way through, or you can give multiple examples, but I do think it's just so super important to understand how that process is getting sped up by AI.
Yeah. So, I mean, we're working with like a very large creator starting Monday. So it's like all this stuff is top of mind. I can maybe get this recording and send it to them in terms of the SOP. But like honestly, like this is what we'll do with them, where we met this week. They have a very specific, like they've already done that research because they're really savvy. Like just like most creators at the scale, like they are really in tune with like what their audience wants. So I didn't do much research. I pressure tested it a little bit, but in reality, they're like, here's all of the I was like, okay, I got it. Like let's do it. And on Monday we're gonna have our kickoff call. On that call, I'm gonna come with my designer on that. When we're gonna be asking questions, we're gonna go a layer deeper than what maybe I have done. On Tuesday, I'm gonna give them the first version of the mock-ups, like ready to go. And I'm not telling them that I'm gonna move that fast, but that's like the expectation that I want to set, right? And then now it's up to them, but I'll recommend maybe you actually get this in front of hands of a few other people. Let's not just be in an echo chamber here with all of us like thinking that we know what's best. Do you have like 100 people we can send this out to? And let's make an email. I'll record a loom, or you can do it as well. And here's like what it looks like. And here's 3 examples. What do you guys think? And so then they'll iterate, they'll give feedback. Like my designer will then take that. We'll do another revision. Maybe we do another revision. It takes maybe 2 cycles, right? So for those prototyping tools, sorry, I'm using V0 for that. It's a product from Vercel. Like it's just super easy to be able to use, to prompt. I still like it when my experts on my team use the tools that were meant to replace them, because I think at that point you get to see that there's so much more you could do with those tools because they just are thinking about it differently. Me using V0 to kind of mock up designs kind of works, but a designer using that, it's incredible how they can, like, it's such an amazing tool for them, right? And so that's why I like to have like the experts using these tools. And so then that's like the first kind of prototyping tool is usually V0. I'll pause there to see if that kind of
say more about that statement of having the experts use the tool that replaced. Is it them? I mean, say more about that. I'm curious.
Yeah, people think that, V0 as an example. You're like, I don't need designers anymore. Oh, like Lovable, like I don't need engineers anymore. You're like Cursor, I don't need engineers anymore. You're like ChatGPT, I don't need anybody anymore.
Claude for writers,
like,
I don't need writers.
Claude, I don't need writing anymore, or I don't need a writer anymore. Yeah, for like mediocre ones, like for average like designers, writers, developers, marketers, whatever. But the people that are really good at what they do and they're open-minded to use these AI tools, it's incredible to see how they engage with these tools. They identify different ways to be able to work with it that is, very difficult to know unless you actually understand like what's going on. So for example, I'm making the original kind of deep research stuff that I talked about. I made it seem kind of simple. I was like, yeah, you just kind of like talking to it and then you just ask it to do stuff. In reality, it is kind of hard to like prompt it properly, but I know how to do that because I did that before. Like I've done that for a career, worked on like these massive research reports and like insights and competitive landscape. And like that's what I did at LinkedIn for like 5 years. Right. And so there's certain little things that I know to prompt or to ask or to format or to structure, which is hard to know unless you've done it before. And so that's kind of what I mean by that. It's like, it's actually way more interesting to have experts use the tools that were meant to replace them than it is anybody else use those tools, thinking that they'll replace those experts.
That's a fascinating, because I think you're right. A lot of people treat it as they want it to be black and white. Now I've got this tool, I don't need X. It's so much gray area. And like you're saying, the fact that you know how to tease out those problems because you've done the cold calls, you've done the sales, you've understood that. You can prompt, you're much more ahead. And that's still where, even for myself, you're learning how to prompt it correctly and get the result that you want. Because, for example, Claude, you type in, hey, take this 20, 5-page, 2-page, and make it into a LinkedIn post. You're going to get something okay at best, right? But it's how do you tease out, give examples, and get to that point. Let's go back to, so V0 for prototyping. Any other tool or just thought processes for that V1? You're sitting down and really just trying to get to the first version as fast as possible so that you can go back to the creator and the creator can go to the audience, or you can just go directly to the creator and say, man, we need to move this, and this. I actually don't think this is right. What flaws, because I think there's a trade-off, right? When you're moving that fast, I'm sure there's still some issues. Do you see the speed part causing any early issues? Or is it just nice that you can get to that V1 faster?
That's a good question. It could at times. I'm guilty of this where, because we're so in the weeds of these AI tools, I think maybe we can move faster than we should, right? Maybe the traditional process took 4 months to do. And now I think it could be done in 2 weeks. But in reality, it should be done in a month, right? And that's okay. Like, we still saved 3 months, and so that's great. But I think that's it's hard. It's sometimes that's hard for me when I'm pushing the team to really like use these tools and like see how fast they can go. I'm guilty of that for sure. Where actually we should have just spent a little bit more time being thoughtful about this. And so moving forward, what I try to do is just recommend that we just commit the time to this so we can think about it. Even though we can move much faster, we'll still move faster, but we just have more time now to run through a lot of iterations. And let's like really appreciate that. It doesn't need to be done in 4 hours. Like maybe it can be done in 3 months instead of 12 months. And that's a win. And like, we should just like not go faster than that, because most of this stuff is not about tooling. It's about like having conversations, like getting feedback. Like it's all unscalable, need to move fast AI stuff, which is great. And now you can just really breathe and do that.
I think that ties really back into your point of making sure that the people that you're showing those early versions to, that are really dedicated audience, understand the context of what they're seeing. Because I think you can get lost in the fact that, someone who's looking, they've never been part of the product development process. They've never seen messy design. They've never seen messy marketing, a V1 of a website, whatever it is. That can be jarring. It can be, I don't know what to say. They
It's
might
not high
not be able
quality enough.
yeah,
And
this is, I would never buy this.
yeah,
They don't understand the process. So I think being careful as a creator, as a COO with a creator, to give proper context and to make sure to vet those people to a degree, or to just understand, to take some of their feedback with a grain of salt, which you always should, but where do they stand on their knowledge of product development, and that I think is really important.
yeah, it's a good point. And I think some creators get that, some customers get that, some don't, right? You almost kind of shoot yourself in the foot if you're moving really fast, because you're like, look, I just did something in 4 hours, and they're like, great, so this should be ready by the end of the week, right? You're like, no, wait, but like that was just the first version of it. Like it
We
actually
have a
takes
lot to
time.
go. Yeah.
Like actually now is going to take a couple of weeks, and so I think that's just on the people like us who are guiding other folks through this transition, to just set the expectations correctly, to push the bounds with your team, but also to just set expectations with your customers, with your creators, and then on behalf of them to your audience, that like this is going to take some time too. And just keep like the same framing of like keep over delivering and under promising. But yeah, that's a hard thing to do sometimes. I'm not going to say that it's always like a slam dunk.
No, it's a tricky balance. Let's go back, Jay, to some of the financial modeling of, and I don't know where you fit this in, as far as you've got a product and you want to figure out price point, but you also want to figure out, if we go down this path, what does the financial projections look like in 6 months and 12 months if we have A, B, and C input? First question is, where do you start to do a little bit of financial modeling in the product development process? And then second is, let's dive into what some of those basic models look like if a creator wants to, or a manager wants to take an attempt.
So yeah, a great question. I would do this right off the bat, actually. So with the research you're doing, you're trying to also pressure test in terms of like what the TAM is, like what the pricing is, what the monetization ability is. How, like, what is an interesting way to be able to grow this? Like, how do we grow this? Do we have like a landing page that we just like get a bunch of waitlist people signed up on for a little while, and then push them to pay for it? If we're posting like multiple times a month, how will that like kind of translate into more people signing up for, or maybe not even signing up at that point, just like buying the product? What other kind of benchmarks can we look back on to like somewhat get to some sense of like an actual model that's going to be applicable in the real world? This stuff is hard though. Like this stuff is not easy to do, because a lot of this stuff is relatively new, right? There's not many examples, at least from like a software development perspective, to be able to say, oh, perfect. If you have this amount of followers and this amount of engagement and this amount of comments and this amount of people buying your other thing, then like the magic formula is like $1 million. Like that's not possible, really, right? But what I would do is have a sense of like where this could go, and like that's where we also really lean in, mainly leaning on like kind of like the strategy consulting or like the product development like background that our team has, to say, okay, cool, like if you have like X amount of followers, like what percentage of them do you think will click through and like explore something that you've promoted in the past? Is it 3%? Is it 1%? Is it 5%? Because you have a smaller audience or more engaged? Like, cool. Do you have any data on that? What was it like when you sold them that thing? Or what was it like when you asked them to sign up for the waitlist for the newsletter? Like, so we're looking for benchmarks that exist already within their brand, and we're validating that with them. I'm like literally showing the model, like, does this make sense? Does that make sense? Like, I don't, they're like, no, but you forgot about that. It actually should be higher, because we're only going to target like the engaged people first. And so let's draw, we're like live in the model, like saying, no, reduce the amount of people there, but like up it by 2x, because like the click-through rate will be higher. And then it comes more to us. It's like, okay, like now that we see that X amount of people are going to be at go live, and then Y amount of people are going to be coming in as we keep posting, like how do we model that out? Assuming that there'll be some churn, like assuming you have like certain cohorts of users, how will that kind of map out over the months? And then how does that impact your revenue? How does that then circulate to the amount of profit you're going to be making? Like we can already start to project out costs like at this stage too, right? Because we kind of like have those models like baked in internally. So I might be going like way into the weeds right now, but that it's like this is like kind of what we do.
This is perfect, and I think it's important that people realize is if you've got 1 million subs on YouTube, what Jay's getting at is 1 million people are not going to buy your product. It's taking that 1 million down and taking it further and further and further and further down, and understanding, okay, 15,000 people we think are going to buy this on a quarterly basis, and then modeling that out. And what you guys are doing, and what you and I have done in the past too, is you can use those metrics that are public, and there's so many ways to model, but you can take the engagement rate from something like a hype auditor and say, all right, I get 2.5% engagement rate on my videos. I post 4 videos a month. And you can take that number, whatever that number is, and then just like you're saying, I think putting churn in, we think there's going to be a 15% churn. If churn is even an opportunity, if it's going to be a reoccurring type of product. If it's a one-time thing, you don't need that right now. But putting in those elements of getting from 1 million to, all right, we think our engagement rate is 5%. We're going to take that 5% of the million, and then we're going to put in a 10% churn, and then we're going to charge X, and just doing simple modeling like that. And then looking at margin as well of, all right, what's it going to cost to make this? And the nice part about digital assets on some degree, right? Some of them have reoccurring. If it's an AI tool, there's going to be reoccurring cost there. But for something like a course, or something like even as simple as a PDF download of a particular asset or resource for your audience, it's a one-time thing. Hey, it's going to cost
variable costs are pretty low on that one.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to cost us $1,000 initially. We think we can make X, but just taking a step further and planning that out, because you may get to it where you say, all right, especially if you're going to build a tool of some sort or an app, whatever it is, we know the upfront cost is going to be this, but it's going to take us 3 years to get back if we're using these metrics, right? That might not be fast enough for you.
Exactly. Yeah, I'll throw a wrench into this conversation because I just got off a call earlier this week with one of the largest news creators, and we were kind of like walking through the model, and he's like, yeah, like he kind of like shared this frame of, like so much of this with the audience is like to provide deposits into that audience, right? Like you're putting like deposits into the bank. You're like sharing incredible content, information, like etc. And he's like, I haven't really withdrawn much before. Maybe a couple brand deals, maybe like some merch. Like I haven't really asked for a withdrawal before, so I don't know what those conversion rates will be, right? And everything we just said is accurate. You should be modeling that. But I think when it comes to building software products, like the frame needs to shift a little bit, just generally at the highest level. This is not a withdrawal. This is still a deposit. The deposit, if done correctly, or it's done, if it's done correctly, then it's a deposit. Like, hey, I built a best in class like product that'll solve your problems. Like, you're welcome. Here it is. Like, does it cost $6 a week? Sure. But like, so. And so I think if you just shift the frame of like, no, I'm still providing value actually. The value is different. It's not free content. It's like a paid product. But that product may be solving a bigger problem than my content does today. If you do it correctly, right? If you do the discovery, if you speak with them, if you actually do this right, it's hard to do that. But that needs to be like the frame that people take before they do. If they don't think that they can actually if they don't feel that, then they shouldn't build a product, probably, right?
I think brand deals have built that mindset a little bit.
Makes sense.
And I think it's really good. I think it's great. Just challenge on your end of let's not view this as a negative. Just because we're charging an amount of dollars for it doesn't mean that we're withdrawing from them. We might be adding insane value, and there's many creators that it is viewed as a deposit, but they're also making a large sum of money because they've delivered a large sum of value. But I think it's a good point by the creator too of they want to be cautious of it because you always get the comments, you do more brand deals, they feel like they just got deposit,
Exactly.
if you're withdrawing from them. It's like,
Exactly. I get that. I totally get that. I mean, I don't need to see another NordVPN kind of ad on like it's like that feels like I'm like I don't need this. Uh,
Jay, let's go and talk about, so we've covered the problem identification, discovery, early V1, and some of the financial projections. Where do you go after those kind of initial product development?
Yeah. So if I were to kind of step back and just talk about the whole process, it's discovery, designs, development, and then refine and grow. Right? Refine and grow could be maybe it's like release and then grow. So discovery we've been chatting about. We're kind of like kind of talking about what it means to design. Like design, you start to put like visual elements together, but also you're trying to understand like what will users feel, how they interact with the product. It's almost like an architect of a home. I know that my cabinets are white and it looks really pretty, but what like if I walked in the door, what did I feel? Or like what was in front of me? Was it my kitchen? Like that doesn't make any sense. Like I probably need a hallway to lead to the kitchen. And then like is there a window? Design generally I think is a really underrated aspect of building software products. I think a lot of products fail because they didn't put the allocated time into designing it and like really thinking critically about what the flows should be. And if you want to study about these things, it's called like user experience and like user interface. Like these ideas are actually really hard. They're hard to find people who are good at those things. I've been looking for them. I keep looking for them, and then that makes the execution of the product so much easier, honestly. So we actually really like to spend a good amount of time on that piece. And then we get into, okay, now we have designs. Like we're going to get feedback from the audience on that. We're going to get feedback from you on that. It looks and feels like it actually is real, but you can't actually interact with it yet. It's like it's like an architecture plan. Like you're like looking at it, you can feel it. And then once you go through that like consistent feedback cycle, then you say, okay, I'm ready to actually have my engineering team be able to build this. And then that usually takes like, let's say like a month, like 2 months to like really like sink your teeth in. And then once you're getting to the end of the engineering phase, then you're doing it again. Like you're gonna put this into the hands of users again. It's not gonna work, right? They're like, oh, like we missed that. Oh, we missed that. Oh, that like, oh wow, this is actually way more valuable than I thought it'd be, right? And so you're continuing to iterate through that process. And then once you finish, we get into the refine phase, like you're literally sitting down with your early users and customers and then you're making sure that they can break the product as fast as possible. You're like, oh, there needs to be a screen here, like you forgot to kind of like like how do I go there, like it's not intuitive to me like how this makes sense. Your engineers on the call, your designers on the call, like they're like updating it live. You're moving really really quickly through that stuff. And then once you're feeling good about that, like that whole stage, then let's start the promotion, right? Let's start like increasing the amount of people that actually get to see this. Let's, instead of like 1,000 people on the mailing list, let's get it up to 50. Let's get it up to 100. Let's stagger it though. Let's not do it all at once. Let's make sure it doesn't break. And then you just keep doing that, right? Like it depending on the creator, depending on the size, like we like to recommend certain rollout strategies, but it's super fun because like the rollout strategies are literally the same stuff we'd have to think about at LinkedIn. It's like you can't roll it out to everybody from day one, right?
No,
Like
there's
it's
got to
going
be
to
a
break.
beta,
You have
alpha.
a ramp plan and like it goes to like 1% at this stage and then 50%, and then you have like check-ins, and it's crazy because like that's literally like what you need to do with creators, right? It's so fun.
Especially with a big audience. That I just want to underline that what you're talking about. If you've got a big audience, it's not a we turn it on one day or we turn it and then we turn it off one day and then it's on the next. It's got to be a tiered process if you want it to go smooth. Otherwise, you're risking too much there. And I think that's where you're seeing the tech world, the world that you come from, collide with the creator world. Of the creator knows how to create really great content, but have they ever launched a world-class product before? Likely not. And that's where there's a lot of learnings to be had. And there's a lot of learnings for, I think, people like you in the industry to give a lot of value to that, because we're used to build the product. All right, now we got to find people to buy this product, and they've got the built-in audience, they've got built-in distribution. That's why there's so much power in it. But like we talked about earlier, there is a lot of responsibility of it, and just understanding and asking people who have launched products what their system is and applying it to yours and tweaking it to yours, I think is really important. What tools, Jay, do you like to use during that feedback process as you're gathering more data? Is it pretty simple tools, just spreadsheet and forms? And is there any other tools that you really like?
Yeah, you can kind of scale up and down with the level of complexity. I think the gold standard is for us. Our gold standard is everybody's in a Slack group actually, or a group like some chat thing that I can just like I can talk to people immediately. I'm solving for just like real time communication with customers, so they can give me feedback on it. I want to recommend that they use Loom, for example, to just like record their product and like send that to me afterwards, or we just hop on an actual live call, like obviously whatever you need to use for that. We like to track things in a project management tool called Linear, and like it just says like here's all the tickets. Like you can build some fun automations where like if a customer says something and they don't like it, then it gets fed into Linear, then it gets fed into Slack, and it's just like right into the engineer's inbox. You're like, this is fix this now. And so that comes over time, of course, but those are some of the systems that I use, that our team uses to make sure that the feedback cycle is like pretty automated, and you can move a lot faster because of that.
What advice would you give? And I know we've talked a lot about it throughout this conversation, but what advice do you give most often to creators in this stage of wanting to start to think about product development, or it's kind of in the beginning stages?
Yeah, it kind of goes back to like a little pithy one liner that I found, and then I said to you, and then you thought that it was me who created it, but I'll say it again, which is, and it's mostly like an education piece here, and just educating people like why are the most digital people building physical businesses? Like, why aren't they building digital businesses? And I think most of my conversations right now are just that. Actually, it's just education. It's like this is the ambition that you have to be able to grow this into like a huge brand, and the ambition you have to be able to grow like sell this course to like millions of people. You can also apply that exact same ambition and skill set into building a software product. For our business, we have creators, we also have founders. And one of our founders will go raise from A16Z because they want to go build like a unicorn. But we're working with the creator, like why if they want to, like they could do the same thing. They could do the same, they can have the same path, they can achieve like the same level of goals. And I think it's just mostly like an awareness thing because people don't there's not enough bridges and there's not enough people talking to each other in the space, right? And I want to be that bridge. Like I want to be the bridge between tech and their creator space, and just make sure that these best practices of like scaling like these massive tech companies can be applied to these creators, and then vice versa. Like how can I connect these creators with these founders and like tech companies, and like maybe they can do brand deals, maybe they can like help these founders, maybe they can join the cap table of these companies, right? And so right now most of my conversation is just like education, and then once like the thing clicks, then start small, like go through the process that we just talked about. You can do it yourself, like if you can, but it likely, like because it's more of like a bet, right? It's like this isn't an urgent thing necessarily right now. What's urgent probably for creators is like making sure like their course is doing well, or making sure like the content
Content's
is
in a
doing
good
well,
spot.
right? And so
Yeah.
this always kind of will fall on the wayside. But I think my hypothesis and like what we're kind of betting the business on is like this will become more urgent over time. It's just like courses and newsletters and like the other ways to monetize they've been popularized sooner. Or now I think it's going to be like software development that'll be popularized. And so then it'll become urgent because you'll start to see case studies of people succeeding in that, right? And you're like, I need to do that. And so I would just encourage you to explore it. Come talk to us if you want to like kind of just jam on this a little bit, and we can share more like best practices of what we're seeing in the space, and just try to get ahead of it a little bit right now, because I think in the next year or so, like it'll become way more commonplace, and not you may not have missed the opportunity per se, but it'll just become a lot more crowded. All the other like peer creators would have already launched their thing. Then it becomes like, okay, even if I've done this research, even if my audience needs this, there's already like 6 other creators that are in my space that have already done this before. And I'm starting to feel that too, actually, in our conversations. Like, I'm like, oh, that sounds a lot like that person.
This,
Like,
yeah.
okay, like,
You're seeing it more and more.
I'm seeing it a lot more now, actually. Yeah, as we get in the space, it's already happening.
Yeah, and I just want to repeat the line that you mentioned to me in the pre-interview that I thought was yours, which is why are the most digital creators creating physical products? And by physical products, we mean CPG, restaurants, retail stores. And it's not to say that they can't
You
or
can,
shouldn't do
yeah,
that.
you can, yeah.
It's just starting a restaurant, maybe one of the most challenging businesses you can run. I mean, the failure rate for restaurants is astronomical. Starting a CPG business, right? There's not that you can't do it. And some of the creators like the Mr. Beasts of the world, they just wanted to do it, so they did it, and they had the capital. Great. But I think for some of the middle class creators, it's let's not take something that is so unbelievably challenging and also just really capital intensive as well. And do you have the capital to last in that and compete in that? Whereas digital products, you're used to a digital world, stick with what you know, because there is a lot of opportunity and a lot of opportunities to work with people like you and other folks throughout the industry that have huge knowledge of this world. It's just like you're saying, a matter of bridging that gap.
Well, I think there's also, do you mind if I touch on like the exit multiple kind
Yeah,
of
of course.
conversation too?
Yeah.
Yeah. So like, we're one of our kind of like partners in this whole exploration. They manage a very large YouTuber today. And they have done all these, they've done physical businesses, they've done restaurants, they've done like alcohol brands, they've done all those things. And the reason why he's kind of gotten up to speed really fast is because he's like, man, A, like you said, these are super capital intensive. B, the margins are so low. But C, you can never really sell them. Like it's hard to sell a restaurant. It's hard to sell like an alcohol brand. Like it might be possible, you could, but and even if you do sell it, the multiple at which you sell it at is usually on your profit. So it's like, so again, it's like it reduces. It's not the revenue multiple. It's like a profit multiple. And for software businesses, at least till today, who knows if it changes over the next like 5 to 10 years with AI kind of coming in, it's a multiple of revenue. And so ironically, like, my friends in San Francisco who are building like software companies, like even if my revenue as an entity, like, which is more oriented like to a services business, like a consulting firm or an agency, which is how we make most of our money today, at least, I'm doing more revenue than them. But their valuation of the company is much higher because it's on a multiple of revenue. Mine's on a multiple of profit. And so it's always just like a stupid kind of, back and forth of like, oh, like I'm more valuable, whatever.
But things to think about.
But it's important, yeah. And then especially if you can build it in a way, this is an important topic too. You can build it in a way that's not like totally affiliated with you. And so it feels like to your audience that there's a product that has been built and then you're promoting it, you're working with it, but doesn't have your name on it. Maybe it doesn't like you can sell it in the future. It's not like only you. And so I think again, like we can help like folks like think about that from day zero, because if they don't, then they're just like, they may not be able to like, sell that in the future.
Totally. And that's probably the biggest pushback from investors is the key person risk with investing in creators. And I still think there's a lot of ways around it. Like you're saying, you can build the product to not be totally associated with you. And Dude Perfect, I was listening to a conversation on Colin Samir with them, and they're thinking about similar stuff too. How do we live without being totally connected to Dude Perfect as, I think there's 4 guys or 5 guys. But same idea of let's not make it 100% based on me. This can stand alone and this can live alone. And there can be marketing strategies that don't involve me just plugging it as well. There can be other marketing strategies too, but I agree. That's a whole, another element that you need to think about. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Creator Ops Podcast. If you're interested in chatting more about the creator economy, send me a message on LinkedIn or email me at thomas@creatoropsmedia.com.